So my first question is, how do you measure the success of developer evangelism? What are the metrics you use? How do you know that you're doing a good job?
Since I have the mic, I don't think that's necessarily an easy question to answer in a couple of sentences, but just, the way that we look at success, measuring the things that you can measure, event impact, content, the obvious, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel conversions. But one thing that's really important with community and evangelism is to measure and pay attention to the anecdotal wins, and share that with the rest of the company as well. So that's.
Is there something you can share?
There's a story about a partnership between Twilio and Microsoft that started over a handshake at South by Southwest, right? By one of our evangelists. And that's an anecdotal win. It's kind of hard to measure because there's a lot that happened after the fact, but that's a win that came from evangelism and community. So telling those stories and tracking those is really important.
Yeah, I agree. It's difficult to do that when what you're trying to do is just create buzz in general, and it's very difficult to count. But you do when you can. When it comes to getting people to participate in hackathons and having them use your API. We have, for our developers, we have a free subscription for developers, and then what we could do is give them cloud credits, and as soon as they do that, we can see what services are creating, we can see what apps they're creating. They can also see those tools to see the impact of the stuff that they're building, and that makes it fairly easy for us to start measuring those things. So if we sponsor a hackathon and we bring our APIs, we also bring voucher codes, and we give those to the developers so that they have free access to the cloud stuff. But what we're doing on the back end is we're measuring the impact of our sponsorship of that hackathon by seeing how many apps are created, how many subscriptions, and that voucher code is attached to that type of event so that we know where we touched you. Well, that didn't sound right. So we can tell where we interacted with you, and then we can kind of measure that down the road. So it's fairly easy to see when we do meetups, when we do hackathons and such, which ones paid off and which ones didn't.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things. This is something that is very hard to do, but I found that instead of just picking one metric, we find a bunch of different things we can track. So Twitter activity is a big one. Find that developers are really active on Twitter, so we try to track just general sentiment on Twitter, who's responding to our tweets. Also, like you mentioned at hackathons, we try to measure if we were one of the most used APIs, how many people signed up from the hackathon. Tracking signups and connecting them to something like a specific event has been really helpful for us. So was this event valuable? Did we get the certain amount of signups, and did those people actually go on to actively use Firebase? So just picking different things that we can measure different areas of activity. Stack Overflow questions are another one. And then just general blog and social media engagement.
I'm just going to agree with everyone. That's it. Measure what you can.
We'll start with Nick next time.
Okay. Well, since you guys have the mics, I'll just keep talking. So I was talking about this panel with a friend, and he asked me, what are the things that a developer evangelist does besides go to hackathons and buy developers beer at bars?
Cool. Oh, I'm so glad I got to answer this. Very little. No, we actually do a surprising amount outside of that. There's a lot that you don't see that's on offline communication type things. There's all sorts of fun little meetings. There's lots and lots of content that we produce, whether that's on Stack Overflow or through blogs or something like that. And then another really important thing that I think is overlooked sometimes is there's a lot of product feedback, right? We as evangelists are out in the field constantly and can come back to our engineers and say, here's something that we did, here's something we see, here's where users have really big problems when integrating with Sendgrid or whatever else. And then at Sendgrid we also do all of our documentation, we make sure that's good, and then we do client libraries as well, but that's very different between evangelism teams.
And I covered a lot of things. Some other things that I work on are, we have this program called the Torch program, which is pretty new. It's basically like a developer ambassador program where we find people that are already active Firebase advocates in different cities that don't work at Firebase and are giving talks about it, and we kind of give them the tools to do that. We found that that's really valuable to have people that don't work at the company going out and spreading the word and getting other people excited about that. Another program, as Nick mentioned, developer feedback is another really important thing. We try to do a charter program every time we have a new feature. So we'll find like a group of 5 or 10 developers that get early access to the product, and they get to test it out, give us feedback, and that usually gets them really excited about it. And we'll showcase them in our blog when we announce a new feature. They get to give feedback on new designs, things like that.
Yeah, we use blogging, our Evangelist blog. They engage on social media, and they do so as themselves with their own name and building their personal brand, not just as a company branded feed or what have you. We kind of break it. I like to think of break it down into 4 areas when I'm managing my staff, and it's physical events and online, and ours and others. So we have a Jive-based community platform. We've used forums and blogging for a long time, but we're also in Stack Overflow and GIS Stack Exchange and other places online like Twitter and Facebook. But then there's physical events. We host our own meetups, but we also join and sponsor and support others, and that's where we find other companies like you're all. I mean, we've worked a bunch with Twilio. And found companies that we can partner with. So our evangelists are out there. They're helping users in general. They're hosting our own events. We are submitting presentations to other tech events so that people can see our stuff. So we kind of break it down in those 4 quadrants. And we're looking at developers, when they're looking for technology, they use what they know what they see, and they see what others are using. So it's really you can't send an email blast. You can't do a brochure. You have to actually get out there and show people what the technology does. So we kind of organize it that way. That way we can measure our own activity to figure out where are we weak, so that we can put more resources in that area.
Just to call out one thing that I think everybody was alluding to, but great developer evangelists also code. You gotta stay hip to the jive. You gotta know what the kids are using these days. So you gotta stay on top of those technologies and figure out what challenges that developers are running into in their day-to-day and know how to help them solve it.
Cool. My next question is 2 parts. So first of all, each of you represents a pretty big and fast-growing company. What's the point where a startup might consider bringing on their first developer evangelist, and what should they look for? And then as you hit the next level of growth, do you talk about the difference between having your evangelists consolidated in one headquarters versus like what you're doing at Sendgrid, where you have a global team where people are situated in lots of different cities?
Alrighty.
Go for it.
You sure you don't want to start?
Why don't we start with Meghan?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right, so when you know if you should hire an evangelist or a community-focused type of a role, that's really dependent on what your goals are. And, so really you need to define what your goals are at that point with your company. Is it just lead generation? Then it's probably not going to be an evangelist necessarily. Are you really thinking about building awareness and community and nurturing those users? Then you're ready to start thinking about evangelism or, a specific community manager type of hire. I will say at Twilio, the first non-founding hire was a community-focused marketing person, and after that it was our first evangelist. So that's been really important in terms of our strategy, and I would say it's been very successful. Initially just what are your goals and how can you hire the right person to help you achieve them?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I have 2 other things to say. It's just like any other task that you're going to be doing, especially if you start small and you only have a couple of people. It's like any other task. It becomes an additional duty part of someone's job until you get to the point where what you want to accomplish becomes more than one person to handle. So it's just like anything else. You're going to take out the trash until there's too much trash, and then you'll hire someone to do that. But secondly, the thing that we really try to do is leverage our user community and our successful developer community. We give them special access. We give them free training, free software, seats to conferences, and they become most of our evangelists don't work for me. What we give them, the ones that are successful, we give them access. We give them the things that they want. We give them recognition. We let them blog on our blog, and they become our evangelists. Not only are there more than I could ever hire, But when it comes to evangelizing the use of technology, it sounds better and it comes across more credible when people are hearing it from people that aren't actually on the payroll of the company.
Yeah, going along with what Jim said, I think it's something that you want to hire like a couple months after you think you need it. So like I think the thing that's most important is you have a great product, and then community is important from day one, but I think people building the product should have a role in building that initial community so that they have the initial contact with them. And then once you've established that you have a great product and a community behind it, I think it's the right time to hire someone that's solely focused on community. And I think it's something that's helped us, since we only have a team in San Francisco, is the Torch program that I mentioned before, where we find people that are actively using Firebase in different parts of the world, and we kind of rely on them to be our global evangelists.
So a lot of people evangelize on your behalf, even if they're not part of your company.
Right. That's almost more valuable than someone at the company giving a talk, is someone that is using it for their product.
They find out what they want and give them that.
Yeah.
Cool. If anyone wants to jump in with any questions, now or through the talk, just feel free to raise your hand. Yeah, in the back.
So we're all selling pretty technical products. What's the good background for a community manager? Does it need to be extremely technical, or are there other skills that are more?
That it really depends on your needs. I would say it's going to be really important for them to be technically minded, because they're going to be representing your product. And you know, if you have a community manager perhaps working closely with an evangelist, because they are different roles and there's different goals with those and different skill set needed. I would recommend at least an interest in the technology and a willingness to learn your product, if not even some coding skills to get started. I don't know if you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I think programming skills are definitely important. When I started at Firebase, I had been just teaching myself to code for a little bit, so I didn't know too much. But it was definitely good to have a familiarity with how the product worked, and I've learned a ton since I joined the team.
It really depends on what you're hiring for. Like Meghan said, if you're looking for somebody who's going to write your client libraries, then you need a developer, right? But if you're looking for somebody who can build that community, you know, our first community-minded person was non-technical, and I think we were fairly successful with that because he understood where that really fit and when he needed to go and find our CTO or something and have him do something else.
What's the difference between a community manager and a developer evangelist?
Well, you know, it's not cut and dry, right? It's a very gray area. It really depends on the company. It depends on how the team's built out. And I can just share kind of our focus at Twilio. You know, there's a lot of overlapping, right? Community managers should be working really closely with the evangelism team, because you're going to be working on content together, events, sharing, you know, community trends and what's going on there. I think one of the biggest differences is, you know, evangelists are going to spend a lot of time out in the field. They're going to spend a lot of time really being a thought leader, again, staying up to date on what developer challenges are and those trends, and staying on top of the technologies. The benefit of having a community manager as someone perhaps who's a home base, that doesn't have such a crazy schedule, is that we can manage programmatic things a little bit easier, and that's a nice balance from evangelism to community. That would be the one.
Do each of you have separate teams, both an evangelism team and a community team?
We do at Twilio. So.
Yeah, the community team is kind of comes under our marketing.
Okay.
But we do a bit of that. I mean, I've got 9 developer evangelists that work for me.
Okay.
They're all smarter than me, and they're all more technical than me. I mean, I know how to code, but they can do it better. That way, you know, like Meghan was saying, I can concentrate on getting them what they need to do their job, so that they can concentrate.
Can you
on
actually
the
talk about
technology.
that a little bit more, with some of your experiences, not just being an evangelist, but managing them, and how to build a successful evangelism team? Because that's a really interesting topic in and of itself.
Yeah, some of them are developers that just don't want to code all the time anymore and then looking to do something different. Others are developers that have very good presentation skills, very good interpersonal engaging skills, and have a passion for the technology. You know, my evangelists, it's not one single mold. They're different people that came from different angles, but they all share kind of a passion for the technology. And I agree also with, we have a GitHub site where we have over 200 repositories of open space projects. That's not only so that our community can be more productive with our platform, but we use our GitHub site as community engagement as well. And it's not a cookie cutter. You find different people, and then after a while, if you've built that team, you get different people are strong in different things.
Yeah, so we have 3 people on our developer relations team, and we kind of all split the community efforts. So we all work on a little bit on social media. We all work together when we host events or sponsor hackathons or conferences outside of San Francisco. So we found it's kind of best to just like divide it between different people. But I'm sure as we grow, we might have people that focus more on community and on evangelism.
We do not have a separate team. It's all evangelists. We have one guy who's not called an evangelist, but we each play to our strengths and do highly community-related things. I don't know where precisely you might draw that line, or highly event-based things, but we all do that and we all play to our strengths and where we might want to.
Yeah. Oh.
I've heard there's a general trend against hackathons lately, and I'm wondering what your guys' opinion, like what's a good hackathon, what's a bad hackathon, what makes it worth developers' time to come to along that line?
Yeah.
So it depends on what you mean, a general trend against hackathons. There's a lot of ways to take that. I think that hackathons as a whole are a great event and they're growing like crazy. The problem with that proliferation is that because they're growing like crazy, there's a lot of bad ones. Yeah. So the things to look for in a successful hackathon, or at least what we look for, is why is it being organized? Oftentimes, hackathons that are organized just by one company that has that company's name as that's their hackathon, Widget Inc. hackathon, that's usually a pretty good indicator that it's not going to be a great event, because they're going into it with a very specific thing, and that's, it depends, it might be sales, it might be user adoption, but it's their thing. You want to look at the organizer, who that is, what their goals are, so again, what team built it, but more than that, are they using keywords like biggest? Sometimes that's a good thing, but it's one of those points to be like, is this necessarily the one? It's sometimes great, like big hackathons can be really awesome, but that's one of my quicker red flags.
I would just reiterate, the organizer and the organizer's intentions will tell you a lot about the event and the potential success there.
Some are very good, some fall flat. Check the beginning theme. Is it civic, government, citizen engagement oriented? Is it humanitarian oriented, or is it really oriented toward startups and using of technology? Sometimes you can tell by getting a list of the people that are starting to sign up. If you get a lot of investment people, then you know that those are the kind of people that are looking to see what's going on there. I would agree. We thought it would be a good idea a couple years ago to start our own hackathons that are oriented around the Esri technology. Those didn't work. We stopped doing it.
Really?
So the way that we can engage, and plus, let's say I do get a lot of people show up because they know our technology and they want to build something using something that they know. That's good that people are building stuff, but these are people that are already using our technology. So it doesn't support our outreach goals. So when we get involved in hackathons, it's others' hackathons that we can come in as a co-sponsor, get a few minutes to talk about what our technology does, get our logos in places, offer our own side prize that incentivizes people to use our stuff. They don't have to, but you'll see that with hackathons that people will try to use a little bit of each of the sponsoring technologies so that they qualify for as many prizes as they can. But those hackathons that we've co-sponsored with others tend to work a lot better than the ones we've organized ourselves.
Quick question for the audience: how many people here are based with companies that are based in the Bay Area? How many are not? Okay, so how do you reach all of the people who are not going to be in the San Francisco Bay Area? Because there are a lot more developers who aren't here than there are who are.
Online is global reach, and I work for a company that's global. so it's easy to get to where we want to be.
That, and then you go to where you want to be and where they are.
Right. So I mean, you said you have a 3-person team, so
Yeah, so online is definitely important, and then the ambassador program I mentioned before has been really helpful. Another thing we've tried to do is send some of our developer advocates just to cities where there's a big developer community. So like someone on our team took a trip to New York, met a lot of people in the developer community there. Spoke at a few meetups. I went to LA a few weeks ago. They have a big developer community. So just like going to places where you know you have a lot of developers, because developers really do like that face-to-face contact, or if not face-to-face, they like to know the people behind the product. So we found just going to different places with developer communities has been helpful.
And understand the differences in developer communities. There are different ways you interact with each developer community in each city. I personally find that San Francisco has a very, very different developer community and very different things that you have to put into it to get the same result as somewhere that had, like Seattle or Portland or New York. They're all very different, and you have to understand that before you go there.
I think we have, yeah.
Can you talk about how your developer community influences you back and the changes you've made to your products and so forth as a result?
I can, but who wants to start?
Go for it.
Well, I mentioned before about our GitHub site. We get a lot of feedback that way. We have an ideas portal where people can submit and vote on ideas, and that stuff bubbles up. Our developers, managers, engineers, and support people always are watching that to get that pulse. We're always watching the conversation that's going on Facebook and Twitter. We have our own community engagement platform that's built on Jive that allows us to keep in touch and be engaged with them. And then of course, when people call for tech support, we get stuff out of that. And that is one of the reasons why we get engaged in, again, talking about hackathons, is not just for sales opportunities and for marketing outreach and for but it's also for testing, ground truthing our technology. Not only is it functionally there, but can it be used to build something fast? And then of course we're also doing competitive analysis at the same time, because they're not just using our technology. And then we're there to do recruiting and to surface local talent to find out who comes on board. That's why I was a little spun a little bit with Esri. It's not a very structured company with positions. Like if someone leaves a job, rarely does someone fill that role in the exact same way. The positions are very molded to the strengths and weaknesses of people. So you'll see, and I don't even think we have an org chart. It just morphs over time. So
Nice.
yeah, that's many different ways that I don't have time to list here that we get feedback from users.
So the great thing about developer communities is they'll tell you exactly what they like and don't like about your product. Very vocal, and it's awesome. So listen. One really important thing, for you as a company or internally, is make sure you're providing a really clear channel of communication for your community, your evangelism team, your support team, to funnel that feedback to product. So choose the right tools and make sure that there's a feedback loop, whether you're using Jira or user voice or whatever it is. Set that up in the early days so that you can capture all the great feedback that you'll get probably without asking.
We're basically at time. We are at time. Thank you very much, everyone.